We're back again. Simon and Jason are joining me. I'm Angelo, I'm your host. And last week we told you guys at the end of the podcast that we were going to go through on Reddit Boxing, look at the questions you guys have and choose some stuff, some topics to discuss. And we're going to get into that later. But I first wanted to get into the big news of the week. And that is that Roman Gonzalez has been officially added to the Gennady Golovkin, Willie the Worm Monroe Jr. undercard. He'll be fighting Edgar Sosa, defending his flyweight crown. Jason, Simon, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the upcoming, potentially, maybe on the cards, Bradley versus Bundridge fight, and then 10 being Mayweather-Pacquiao 2009, where you guys at, Jason?
That's a big scale. That scale covers a lot of ground there. Good examples. I think I'm pretty excited. I'd say anywhere from a 7.5 to an 8. I'm not an 11, but I think it's exciting. I've seen a couple fights from Gonzalez. He's always exciting. Very, very fun fighter to watch. I think putting him on the Golovkin undercard, what could make more sense than that? It's just a great move by HBO, in my opinion.
We can come up with some things that probably make more sense, but we'll stop that. And a 7.5 is good. Like, if that was an earthquake in California, we'd probably lose some lives.
Yep.
What do you think, Simon?
I don't know much about earthquakes. Sorry, what?
You don't have earthquakes?
No, I don't think we've had one.
Like, ever?
No, I think we've had like a really baby one in the 80s or 90s, but
yeah, not everybody in the world lives on a fault line that's active. Angela.
Yeah, I think we're on like a solid like tectonic plate. So
yeah.
Oh well, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like laying in your bed and feeling this sort of vibrating sensation, and then just sense of doom just overrides you in that moment. But we can get to that later. It's probably what Bernard Hopkins felt in the first round when he felt Kovalev's first punch. And what Edgar Sosa is probably going to feel, though, when he steps into the ring with Gonzalez.
Where's your excitement level on that?
I don't want to say a 10, but I do want to say a 10 because...
Yeah, you do. Yeah, say it. You do.
I'm really excited that he's finally going to get the exposure that he deserves. That he's finally, and we're finally going to get the chance to see him in real HD. And none of these little... streams from the 80s where I think it's traveling through time to reach us.
Your cable package doesn't have the Nicaraguan Channel 4?
It doesn't. Okay. I don't even have cable. Gonzalez, he's just got such a unique skill set, and it's the kind of skill set that you cannot help but like and enjoy every time you watch it. He stalks his opponents. He's like an animal in there. The way he's not full-on aggressive. He's not Kovalev, and he's not even Golovkin. But there's that sort of element that's there. And I always like to say that he's a perfect combination of what you would get if you combine Gennady Golovkin, Sergey Kovalev. But you didn't name him Gennady Kovalev. You named him Roman Gonzalez.
Well, he fights with a lot of pressure, and that just leads to creating openings and leads to his fights being exciting and having dramatic conclusions. And HBO's, obviously has their eyes open with PBC making big moves in boxing. They're looking to see how can we cater to maybe, a very devout boxing audience. And this is their solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a technician, isn't he? In terms of he puts the work in. It's not hurried. He's never a hurried knockout performance. It's always just solid work built up towards and he gets there in the end. The stoppage comes for him, but it's not like he's going out of his way to produce it.
I have another thought about why I'm excited for Gonzalez to appear on HBO, and that is that maybe if he looks impressive enough, there will be a push for HBO to want to make some money off of him and put him with Zhu Shiming. And I just want to see how Zhu Shiming does against Gonzalez. Runrong didn't have the power to really do anything to Shiming. But what would Gonzalez do?
Like box circles around him.
Oh, I thought that's what Runrong did.
Yeah, I mean, it will be more of the same, but with Gonzalez, he has that power in both hands where he's gonna trouble you. So Ruan was outpointing him, but I don't think Ximing at any point was really in danger or was hurt. It's going to look visibly the same, except the punches that land are going to have a hell of a lot more damage on them. And you're going to see someone in a really bad position.
One thing I want to give credit to as well is that HBO wasn't the one who brought Gonzalez onto their network. It was all Tom Loeffler of K2 who wanted Gonzalez on the undercard. So a lot of credit needs to go to Tom Loeffler. And if you want to send thanks, you want to send him flowers or a fruit basket, that's the guy to do it to.
Well, he doesn't stand to gain anything from that. I wonder what his motives are. I don't think Gonzalez is affiliated with K2 in any way, is he? He could be, and I might.
He's not. Yeah. He's a Taken fighter. From Japan.
Right. So I wonder what he stands to benefit from, making that strong of a push for Gonzalez to the point where he ended up getting him on HBO.
Would it be too unlikely to suggest that maybe he's a fan and he just wanted to see Gonzalez, and maybe by bringing him over, take out an early option on him so that when Gonzalez makes his big impression, which he's no doubt going to do, K2 has first dibs on him?
Well, that's what exactly. I'm just suggesting Loeffler has to have a bigger plan. I don't think it's solely out of the kindness of his heart,
He's someone who's cleared out his division as well. So, I mean, what's... You're saying he makes his impression. Where does he go from here? Where does his story take him?
Ximing.
You think that's his apex, is going to be fighting a recently bested Ximing?
Well, yes, as far as getting a pay. However, I also think that after that, Juan Francisco Estrada is a fight that you can sell, and it's one of those fights that this is really one of the best fights you can make in the sport. And Estrada fights this upcoming weekend as well.
But in that matchup,
the logical next step for both of them.
How highly do you rank Estrada's chances in that matchup?
I think Estrada would have better, if not the same odds as Manny Pacquiao does of beating Floyd Mayweather, which is that's as close as you're gonna get. No, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't go that far because the line was like what, plus 250. Estrada's gonna have those kind of odds. Gonzalez does have a win over him already. He beat him a few years back, but Estrada took his punches, went the full distance with them. It was a competitive fight, but Gonzalez was clearly just had that next level of talent that Estrada didn't have.
Physically, is he big for Fly? Could he stand to go up?
No,
No,
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez. I'm trying to map out
where his career could go. Here.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes to Superfly, what's there for him?
Naoya Inoue and Carlos Cuadras. Now, whether or not he can compete with them, that's an entirely different question. Gonzalez isn't a massive guy. He's 5'3". He's even smaller than Estrada. And Inoue, he's a little bigger, but not by much. So I think those fans out there who don't really follow or care about the lighter weight classes are probably checking their watches right now.
Absolutely, and it's a shame because looking through it, in terms of who has the most fans, I wouldn't say Inoue would be he doesn't command a big audience. You need Gonzalez moving all the way to Super Bantam before there's big marketable stuff for him to do, like where he can at that point be looking at Quigg and Santa Cruz and Frampton. And if he's a small fly as it is, it doesn't look like he's going to be able to jump up a couple of weight classes to meet them.
Yeah, that could be it's a long ways away.
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple of years in front of him.
It's really unlikely, just given that Gonzalez began as a minimum weight. That's
exactly. Yeah,
he's already
he's done his growing process. Yeah,
and I'm not even going to get into fighters who move up from minimum weight to other weight classes, and just the difficulty that you would think is there naturally. But let's talk about something that Jason feels very passionate about. Cornelius Bundret. No, I'm just kidding. Um, let's jump into our next discussion topic, and that is the question which was posed by one of the users on Reddit Boxing, a regular over there, Imi Nimi. I hope I said your name right. He asked, "Have you ever scored around 10-10?"
I jumped in early in this
Yeah,
thread,
you feel
and
strongly.
yeah, and I didn't necessarily have the best reaction to what I was saying. My kind of thought process on it is it's okay to do in the rarest of circumstances. Like it may happen. Uh, I haven't personally scored around 10-10. I think there is usually at least one thing that will differentiate one of the fighter A over fighter B. Even in those really like early rounds that sometimes are like feel out rounds, or sometimes rounds at the very end of a fight when basically both guys have lost stamina and they're exhausted. Those could become very, very tough rounds to score. um, but I feel if you apply all four sets of judging criteria, you could usually find somewhere that one of the fighters was able to take the edge in the round. What do you guys think?
I have scored 10-10 rounds. I don't typically use them when they're really exciting. If it's a closely fought contest that's riveting, I'll usually be able to figure out, as you say, using the criteria on who's going to pip it. I tend to use 10-10 rounds when it's a super dull round that no one seems to have want to do anything. When you've got both people being really cagey, not wanting to do anything or commit. It's
So
at that
you
point.
probably scored a lot of 10-10 rounds in the Vasquez Bay fight.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
In all
It was
seriousness.
120-120. Yeah.
And for me, 10-10 rounds aren't about both of these deserve the credit. I tend to use them as neither of them do. And you're not getting an advantage, but because of that, you didn't do enough to warrant a point advantage, in my opinion. So my 10-10s are usually like punitive measures.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I can understand why somebody would do it, for that reason. But I felt like it was being talked about that like almost like boxing's really tough to score because there's so much going on. How do you know who's doing what? And it's like, well, no, if you take enough time, if you watch, if you pay enough attention, if you're, committed enough to sitting down and scoring the fight.
Yeah.
And it takes practice though. That's the other thing that got brought up in the thread is, when I first started watching boxing, I had a very hard time scoring it. And then, I watched, Noir and some of the other mods do round by round, and I started doing round by round myself. And when you're doing round by round coverage, you have to watch boxing not for its entertainment. You're focusing solely on, how to score this fight, and that's a completely different experience. And if you're sitting down to just sit down and enjoy a fight, I could see where maybe it's easier to just throw a couple 10-10 rounds out because maybe you weren't paying a close enough attention because you were more involved in just, the entertainment factor.
Yeah, enjoying it on a very sort of like primal level where it's connecting with you in the gut, and you can't connect in that way. I think a lot of people will find, it was certainly my experience, that when you start first scoring fights, that you'll often be completely in disagreement with the official judges who've been appointed, and you'll think that it's all corrupt and all the judges are awful. What it actually is that I was awful at scoring fights and have got better over time, and so now I think that gap is a lot wider, narrower now. In terms of what they come out with is usually more or less what I had at the time as well.
What I've realized too is that I could score a fight one way, and while I'm scoring it, I mark down which rounds were variant or swing rounds.
I always do that.
And then you could almost always go back and your card would line up with one of the judges. You know what I mean? It's very rare that I see a fight that is so poorly judged that it's like, oh my, that you have to throw your arms up. Normally, even if you don't agree with my scorecard, I can make a case for why it was judged in such a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I always keep track of those, and Simon will tell you after the fight. I usually message these to him. What I think the range of scores could be, and a lot of times my score will fall somewhere in that range, And like in the case of the Shiming fight, I scored it for Shiming by I think I scored it a draw, but with the knockdown,
You had it, yeah,
he
1 point wide for Ximing.
yeah, but it wasn't like I was attached to that score. There was no way that I was going to argue that Shiming had won that fight. Seriously, it's just, at the end of the
Mm.
round, I added it up, and that's what it came to. And I'm trying to see how to connect that back to scoring rounds even. But for me, I don't score rounds even, and I never will, unless there's a knockdown and somebody comes back, and then we're forced to score 9-9. I do not score rounds even because this is like how you have corruption or people claiming that these are bad scorecards or judges don't know what they're doing. Stop scoring even rounds. Therefore, there's going to actually be a gap there. Um, and I'm just trying to think for myself, when was the last time you guys scored an even round or saw a round that was even? Where you had a
Uh,
really tough time deciding who won the round?
I can't remember off the top of my head. It might be as far back as when Pulev went with Thompson, that there were a couple rounds there when no one did anything, and I gave him 10-10.
Well, did you fall asleep during that round?
Nearly, yeah.
I can't even
Okay.
remember, but
Well, I mean,
some of the
actually, let's just make a rule then. When you start feeling like you're going to fall asleep during a round, that round is 10-10. And it's a
I think,
punishment for
yep.
both fighters.
That's kind of I do, yeah. That is kind of my rule of thumb, is if neither of them have earned it, or even, if one of them's trying to be the aggressor and the other guy's moving all over the place, not letting them get into range, that's one thing. But when they're both there, neither of them taking steps forward, both know that they're out of range, but just throwing jabs for the sake of it that hit air. Those we've all seen those rounds. Those are the rounds that are
Yeah.
in danger
Right.
of 10-10 from me.
So I think what was happening though in that thread, at least my perception, is people were confusing that kind of a round with what would be considered a swing round. So and there's a big difference, right? Because like a swing round is just a round that you could easily see going either way. So
Yeah.
a lot of what was being brought forth was, oh, well, there's a round that's so close you could kind of see it going either way, because both fighters were effective or whatever. Then that would be 10-10. And
Yeah,
I
that's
just I can't get on board with that because those are the rounds where it's most important to pick someone.
that's the Jim Watt philosophy, isn't it? That you're gonna every swing round is 10-10 because it's not fair to rob one of them.
Right.
But
He's such a
when
kind guy.
it's ironic because in scoring those rounds 10-10, you're not just robbing one guy, you're robbing both of them.
Certainly.
So yeah, I appreciate swing rounds, or you don't want to steal that point off someone, but neither of them are getting an advantage by you calling it a tie.
And another thought that I have on that is that when there are those rounds where they seem even because there was a lot of action, I always look to, okay, whose game plan was it to have that kind of round?
Mm.
In this,
Right.
let's take Pacquiao Mayweather for example.
Right. You're looking at ring generalship. Who was the one that was controlling the pace of that round?
I would say it's a little different than that. I would say that I know what Mayweather's game plan is, and he's like the easiest one because we know what his game plan is. It's to hit and not get hit, and he fights at a particular pace, and Pacquiao fights at a particular pace. Now, if they have a really even round where Mayweather is giving just as good as he's getting, however, it's at being fought at a Pacquiao's pace where they're both slugging away, but who really got them into that slugging match? It was Pacquiao.
It's Pacquiao. Right.
That's when I'm gonna say, okay, Pacquiao won that round because he may have even taken some of the worst shots, but Mayweather's not on his game right now. And now then it brings up the other argument of like, well, what if Mayweather just adjusts and that's what he does throughout the fight? Now you're gonna score every one of those rounds that are close for Pacquiao. No, in that case, you look in the past, say, okay, Mayweather's adjusted, and he's now fighting in this style. But I think that's one of the things that at least I look at when there are a lot of those close rounds where they could go either way. And I don't think there's an answer for the rounds where nobody does anything. I find that usually somebody does something. It just reminds me back to the really early days of UFC. I think it was like one of the first 5 UFC events. I remember watching on pay-per-view, and there were these two guys, and it was a big fight. There was a lot of people at the house, and the guys just circled each other for almost what felt like 5 minutes. They just circled and stared and kind of like acted like they were going to go in and didn't do anything.
Mm.
That was an even round. And I don't even remember what happened at the end. That's how boring that was.
So, hey Angelo, when's the last time you scored a round even in a boxing match? Oh yeah, an MMA match from 6 years ago.
This wasn't 6 years. This was the early 90s.
Okay.
It's the early 90s. I was a kid.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So let's
Anyways,
switch gears a little bit.
yeah.
Unless, Jason, you want to voice your true feelings and,
No,
and start insulting
I'll get off my
people.
soapbox. No, that's fine.
Okay, so I was watching the fight game, as Jason no doubt did, and as Simon didn't because he doesn't have HBO. So Jim Lampley, he reads off the fight games pound for pound list, and number one, who has been number one the entire time, Floyd Mayweather, since the fight game's inception, he's been number one. Number two, Gennady Golovkin. Number three, Manny Pacquiao. Number four, Roman Gonzalez. And number five, Sergey Kovalev. Now, Simon, what's your reaction to hearing that for the first time? Just real quick.
Where's Vlad?
Okay.
All right.
Vladimir Klitschko, the heavyweight champion who just knocked out the number two or the number one other heavyweight in the world. Yeah, that's a good question.
So my gut reaction, the first thing that jumps out at me when I hear that list is like, how high on Golovkin is HBO right now? Like, to put him at number 2 pound for pound above Manny when they're theoretically, Manny's network for the biggest fight in boxing. I find it interesting that, Manny was lower than Golovkin. I find it interesting where Kovalev's rated in that mix, considered like Kovalev versus Golovkin's resume at this point are just kind of two totally different things, right? Where Kovalev has beyond proved himself, and Golovkin still just hasn't had those fights yet. Like, he's fought good people in his division, but nobody that we would really, at the elite level.
Yeah,
Whereas
through no fault of his
Pascal,
own, obviously.
No, I'm not saying that, but it's almost irrelevant whose fault it is. We have one guy who's done it and one guy who hasn't. I find it interesting to see at this point that they're keeping Kovalev lower than Golovkin.
So what do you think about that, Simon? Where do they rate pound for pound? And I'm specifically talking about Golovkin and Kovalev.
I think Kovalev, my estimations of him went down after the Pascal fight. I thought he was the real Superman of light heavyweight until I saw what Pascal was able to do and the success he was able to have. I still rate him highly, obviously, and he's going to be a challenge for anyone at that weight. But in terms of pound for pound estimations, which are a subjective thing at the end of the day, that does take a hit there. Were these published after that fight?
Yes, this came after Kovalev.
Wow.
Pascal.
I wonder whether they'd submitted it and then couldn't be bothered to revise it, because I don't know if I'm alone on that, but my stock in Kovalev went down from that fight.
Yeah, I think that's kind of we talked about it, I think, at length last episode.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I tend to disagree with that. But.
And, Golovkin being as high as he is, do we think that that's political, though, through HBO links? I don't know how thick they run.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It would seem to be. HBO Golovkin, I think, is basically what HBO is going to look to use as their next star.
No, it's absolutely political.
Yeah,
HBO has all of their eggs into the Golovkin basket
in the Golovkin
right now.
basket. Like, to suggest that, I find it hard to make a case for Golovkin being higher pound for pound than Kovalev at this point. But.
And I think this is conspiracy theory time now. But Kovalev, there is a threat with HBO that Kovalev can easily go to some other network. I think his contract with Main Events is ending soon as well. And he could conceivably just go to PBC and get his Stevenson fight, or go off for at least one fight to fight Stevenson and then come back to HBO, which I'm not sure if he would when he compares the payday he's going to get fighting on a Heyman card versus on the HBO card. And I think that might be why he's a little lower. And I think it's bizarre, given that Golovkin's best win to date is probably Daniel Geale and Martin Murray. Kovalev's unified titles against Hopkins, and he's beaten Pascal, who's, I mean, he's about at the same level as Martin or Gil are in the middleweight division. There's no way,
Yeah.
in my opinion, can you rank Kovalev lower than Golovkin, given the full arsenal of what we've seen from
Exactly.
Kovalev.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's important. I'm critical, as you know, of Kovalev's fight with Pascal, but the thing that we do have to take away, Pascal's not someone who gets into trouble and doesn't get rocked, and Kovalev steamrolled him.
Right. First time
Yeah,
Pascal
in terms
touched
of-
the canvas, first time he got knocked out.
He stopped a hard man, so he didn't look technically excellent doing it, but he got the job done. He got the results in, and I don't know. I think if you wanted to be pure to what the pound for pound list is supposed to be, if you were magically able to adjust everyone to an equal sort of footing, how do they come out? You know, what happens between Golovkin and Kovalev?
We win. That's it. We win.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know who wins.
No,
I
it's
think
a
Vladimir
different one.
Klitschko beats them both, though, but that's just me.
I agree. You know, not going to fight you on that one. But with Kovalev and Golovkin, at appropriate sizes in Magic Land where this can happen, there's not a clear answer, I don't think. And that should really ring some alarm bells that, you know, maybe Golovkin does deserve his spot up that sort of level of pound for pound listing. Because if we're struggling to come to a decisive answer about who you think wins in that fantasy matchup, then it's got to mean that there's a lot of confidence in Golovkin and his abilities.
That's a really, really good point. I gotta give you some credit there. That's a really good point. But I just got a text from Guillermo Rigondo, and he says, in this fantasy land, does he have an HBO contract, and is he pulling in like a 1.5 every time he fights?
Yeah, I think he is, isn't he? That would be a fantastic thing for some of the guys that are talented at the lower weights.
Do you think HBO is a little biased towards these exciting sort of fighters like Golovkin and Pacquiao and Gonzalez and Kovalev? Do they like a specific type of fighter, or is that just me?
I don't think it's HBO. It's the audience. You
Yeah,
know,
right.
people love it. They that's what gets tweeted about. That's what gets talked about. The water cooler. You know it's the big thing. You don't see the YouTube compilations of top 10 best decisive ring general shit. You know, it's always top 10 knockouts. You know.
And Angela,
That's a
do you think
really-
Roman Gonzalez would be on HBO if his last 20 fights ended in unanimous decisions?
So that was a really good transition point that I'm going to ignore your last comment because that was not
Great.
funny.
Was it supposed to be funny? Like,
No,
you asked a question that's like, do people like exciting boxers?
No,
Like-
I was saying what I was saying was that HBO's idea of who the
they're
best
gonna
fighters in the sport are seem to be a little biased towards those
Towards
fighters who are more
aggressive-
offensively inclined.
Yes, absolutely, and it's because it's what fans want, though. But I
Fair
think you're
enough.
absolutely right. They do have a bias towards it.
Fair enough. I thought the pound for pound list was like who the best fighters were in the sport and not a popularity contest.
Right.
Anyway,
That's where you made an error, isn't it?
I did
Because-
make an error.
Yes.
I forgot. I actually didn't
You
even know what we were talking about.
What are we talking about?
Well, right now we're going to talk about. So you mentioned something about the lists and how if Gonzalez had not or went to decision in his last 20 fights, he would not have this opportunity on HBO. And the knockout is one of the most
Enchanting.
enchanting. The knockout is one of the most enchanting things out there, and it's through knockouts that Donaire had one of the most ridiculous 2-year runs we've seen of any fighter.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
in his last 4 fights now, he's 2-2. He did win a world title against Simpiwi Vetyeka, but he was thoroughly outclassed by Guillermo Rigondo, struggled with Vic Darchinyan, and was KO'd by Nicholas Walters. So he's coming back to the super bantamweight division. He fights this Saturday against William Prado. Are you guys at all optimistic about Donaire's future? Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, yeah, no, I thought it was... I haven't been optimistic since I saw him in the Darchinyan fight. Just...
You were optimistic in that fight? At
No,
what
no,
point
no,
before
no.
the
I
bell
said
rang?
No. no. Like that fight cemented me knowing there's nothing to be optimistic about.
Oh,
That's what I was trying to get at.
I
Is
see.
once I saw his performance in the Darchinian fight, I said, no, that's it. I wouldn't necessarily bet the bank on this guy anymore, just because it was such an abysmal performance of somebody that he should have been able to, I think, handle a little bit better. Granted, Darchinian definitely has a rough and tough style, but it's somebody that he had been in the ring with before and knocked out before with the same punch. And just to see how much he struggled in that fight, I haven't been optimistic about him since then.
He's a banana skin there, isn't he?
He's moving back down to 122.
Yeah, which is always going to do him favors. He was above where he should be, but I don't think it's going to be enough.
Well, he'll now have a size advantage that he didn't have at featherweight.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, he can cut that weight easily.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It might end up taking a little bit more out of him than it ever has, making it back down there.
Mm.
He's older now, He's training over Skype.
That is weird. Did you ever see the show True Detective?
Yes.
I have.
Yes.
It's good.
Right. I hate True Detective, so that is going to be a like prerequisite knowledge going into this point I'm going to make. But
you
I
must hate Matthew McConaughey. Is that what it is? You don't like American accents?
It's nothing to do with that, mate. It's that they set it up where he's this tortured intellectual, but because no one in the writing team was actually very smart, he ends up sounding like a whiny teenager. He comes off as like Holden Caulfield type character to me, where he's like, "Hey, I just figured out, religion's a lie, man." And it's like, yeah, congrats, like, well done, like, aren't you smart? But I think part of its success was that it was gritty, it was in the desert, and it was very brown cinematically.
It was the desert.
It wasn't the desert, but
no, you know what I mean.
It was like
the swamplands. Yeah,
everything feels brown, and it felt like it was shot in the style of Breaking Bad. And I think that people that came to the Breaking Bad party late wanted to show up early this time, but weren't able to spot the difference between like the genuine article and the cheap imitation.
Oh God, no! I gotta disagree with you on
And
that.
I think that similar things happen with Nonito Donaire, where people have said, this is the next Pacquiao, and I'm going to be in the fan club early because that'll give me, credit.
That is a really, really
That's a good point about Donaire.
theory.
Yeah. Yep.
I was wondering where you were going with that,
Yeah.
and I was going to tell you that for me, True Detective was like...
It was one of the best shows of last year. Yeah.
I think it was just like, do you want to feel what depression is like without actually having depression? Watch this show.
Yeah, there was. I don't quite see the Breaking Bad analogy there. As far as from like maybe from a character perspective, but definitely
He's
not.
not
from
comparing it to that. He's comparing to like the sort of like the feel of it.
Yeah, it's spiritually could be seen as a successor or whatever. I mean, I'm used to having this conversation because I've spoken to lots of really impassioned fans about this show who always, are amazed that I hate it and can't see where my opinions come from. So I'm not surprised in the least that people ardently support it. But, just personally for me, it has nothing. It was just awful. Like,
did you guys
give me
watch
those
Jinx?
strongly about this show?
Did you guys watch The Jinx by any chance?
The what? Sorry,
The Jinx on HBO.
No,
No, I didn't see it either. But I know the guy got popped for murder.
Yeah, it was fucking amazing. It's a fantastic show.
Should I start
like
watching it now that I know that he's gonna get popped for murder?
No, you shouldn't. It won't change it. Like, it's an amazing documentary. It's like a 6-part miniseries documentary.
Yeah, but back into boxing though, because
leave all that in. Yeah.
I'm gonna leave all of that in.
No,
I have loads of people. Usually, I get hate mail for like criticizing Golovkin or something. Now I'm gonna get hate mail for criticizing McConaughey.
Okay, I'm gonna post just that into like our McConaughey.
What?
Yeah. Thank you.
Does that really exist?
No, I don't know. I'm sure it does. Everything in Reddit exists.
That was way more clever than it should have been. You got some explaining to do.
What, me?
Yeah,
You never heard that?
No.
Oh, that's a common. No, that's a common one. That's a
I've
common.
not heard it either.
That's a
Really?
likely. It's a likely.
It's an East
Defense.
Coast thing. It's an East Coast thing.
Okay, yeah. The one thing that we don't have in common.
Yeah. It's the East Coast thing.
All right. Well, you know what?
I heard it in
Good
New York.
point about though Donaire and that people wanted to be on the boat, and I think HBO. And that's why. I mean, think about it. HBO was showing the fights of a super flyweight and a bantamweight. Have we seen fights in that division on HBO since then?
No, absolutely. Yeah. It's I think even they were under the spell that, we can make this the next Pacquiao. He's gonna, he's got very similar qualities, and we're gonna get in early this time.
Yeah,
Right.
you know
And he
what?
was fighting at a weight advantage and creating devastating KOs.
Mm-hmm.
So he had all the makings. He had the right nationality. He had the ability to score dramatic stoppages. And that was coming on the heels of Manny. Maybe getting older. So everything aligned really well for Donaire's career. From
Yeah,
that
he
perspective.
interviews well as well. He's a
Absolutely.
lovely bloke. When you hear him speak,
Yeah.
he is lovely. So yeah, he's marketable.
Absolutely.
You know where they missed it? Where everybody missed the boat on this one? The best Filipino fighter on the planet. Maybe I can hear out some arguments that he's even surpassed Pacquiao so far as right now his accomplishments are better. And there's Donny Nietes, who's the light flyweight champion. He's a terrific fighter, great footwork, can fight inside or on the outside. He scores nice stoppages, and he's been in a lot of entertaining fights. And I'm just, Nietes is fighting on this card too. His opponent is no better than Donaire's. However, Nietes is taking a backseat despite being a reigning champion. And I just think it's a little sad that Donaire's getting all the publicity for this fight, and Nietes, once again, even with Donaire on the card, is not getting any respect or mention.
Well, this is kind of the way to bring him into the light of the fan base, though, right? In get him on the eyes of people who are going to be tuning in to see Donaire.
Well, we'll see. I mean, we're not going to see it here in America.
Yeah, it is a shame. Of all the fights this weekend you could look at, the Donaire fight is going to be the one that generates most conversation and most interest, despite it probably being the least significant or of low significance than most of the others.
Yeah, but we're trailblazers, so that's enough of that. Let's talk about Kell Brook and Jojo Dan. And so, for anybody who doesn't know, Kell Brook is the best welterweight out there who isn't Mayweather or isn't Manny Pacquiao. And you may not even remember him in his fight with Sean Porter, or even have just been thrilled by him when you've watched him, is because he's kind of a textbook fighter. He does everything by the book. It doesn't create as much excitement in his fights as, say, Thurman or the other
Frankie
welterweights
Gavin.
like Maidana out there. Frankie Gavin is another one. He's actually going to be on the undercard and stealing the show from Brook, leading up to what I hope is a big showdown in the summer between Frankie Gavin and Chris Van Heerden. So Brook is coming off a win over Sean Porter, though. So what do you guys think? Have you guys actually seen Jojo Dan fight?
I don't think I have.
I think you both have and you don't remember.
Yeah, that could definitely be possible. Yeah.
He fought Kevin Bizier twice. I don't remember which undercard it was. I think it was on one of those cards where Stevenson and Kovalev were both on the card together in Montreal. But Jojo Dan's one of those like grinder type of fighters. Like, he is going to make this tough. If Kell Brook struggles, he has a built-in excuse with his leg injury. But if he also struggled too, I would say, well, this was always going to happen whether he had the injury or not.
The injury is just really what worries me the most. I know we've talked about it on the podcast, I think, one other time, and Simon said, everything should be on course. But I don't know, man. Those pictures of that gash and everything, it just looked so bad. It's hard to believe that he was able to heal up to 100%. You know what I mean? Is he able to get back? And the boxers, their legs is just such a vital instrument. So I don't know. I'm very interested to see this fight from that aspect.
Yeah, he is more than most reliant on his legs as well, just because of his style that he fights with. I don't know, it's a dangerous one, and it's kind of like you want to hold your breath for this fight and cross your fingers that he's going to look as good as he has done, because it could be a really depressing fight where you realise that someone hasn't got it anymore. I'm hoping that he looks fantastic out there, but one of the dangers as well is that because of the shall we say, limited opposition that he's got, even if he breezes through it, it's still going to leave those questions until he's against Porter again or someone in that echelon of fight, whether he's really still got it. Do you get what I mean? That even with his leg might not necessarily be fully healed just because he's able to deal with Jojo Dan. So his career is going to be one of trepidation and racking nerves. There'll be brave people betting on him going forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. The Jojo Dan fight, I think, will give us maybe a baseline for where his leg's at. We're not gonna be able to put an exclamation point behind it. You know what I mean? Like I think there's still gonna be some unanswered questions, even in a dominant performance. We'll have to see. But I really wish the best for him because I loved what he did with Shawn Porter.
Yeah. Not a lot of people were wanting to get in the ring with Porter. He looked near unbreakable at that point, and Brook did it, and now has had this happen, which is another setback on his way to a potentially good payday, which is a shame. It happens to a lot of people, but he's paid his dues to fight the best in that division, and I hope that he gets the chance to.
It's sad because it's been a lot of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or what I really mean is 1 step forward, 2 steps back for Brook in his career. The dude had 3 title shots lined up prior to the Porter one, and for various reasons, whether it be injuries to him, to his opponent, or whoever, he never got a title shot. And when he finally got one and won it in spectacular fashion outside of England, he now suffers the injury, which sliced through 2 muscles on his leg. That was a really serious injury. The prognosis,
yeah, it was a big deal.
They said he might have never walked again, and he almost bled out completely. And I don't know if you guys read the article, but he was sliced in somebody's apartment and crawled all the way down into the street and banged on somebody's door before somebody called anybody.
Yeah, and it was in a pretty. You said Simon mentioned it was in a pretty shady place too, right? Somewhere in Spain.
Yeah, one of the islands, but
that's known for
yeah, it's a sketchy one. I don't think he'll be going out there again in a hurry.
He's not going to go back to celebrate his victory over Jojo Dan.
No, I wouldn't imagine so. But I'm hoping that he's all healed up and that he gets the career earnings that he was on track to.
I couldn't find the statistic. I've seen it before, though. But what Brook did against Porter, winning in America, been pretty rare that British
hometown. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't his hometown, but to his home country at least. I'm
sorry, yeah, home country, yeah.
British fighters haven't done that very often in boxing history.
No, it was a massive accomplishment for Brook, and to do it at the hype of Shawn Porter was just made it even better because Shawn Porter was really high on the upswing at that point.
Yeah,
and, so
I'll admit I was wrong.
Yeah, you couldn't have plucked Porter off at a better time to make a name for yourself.
Yeah, and I thought Porter was going to stop him. I mean, I'd seen Brook get hurt by Vyacheslav Senchenko, so I figured if Senchenko was able to hurt him, Porter is going to do this in a couple of rounds. It's not even going to be a challenge. But the best that I'd seen from Brook turned out that was really just who Brook is, and it wasn't just flashes. So like we've seen with Donaire over time. Let's jump on to the Charlo fight, though. Jermell Charlo is going to fight Vanes Martirosyan. What do you guys think about Charlo? He's an interesting prospect. Simon, have you seen much of him?
No, and it's confusing as well because there's someone with almost an identical name on the same card.
It's his twin brother.
Twin brother, right? Jermell and Jamal. Yeah.
I think because they never have that super obviously highlighted in coverage for us over here, I may have been led to believe they were the same person.
It's an easy mistake to make.
Well, just unless they're always fighting on the same. Yeah, where they're not together, you're just like, I swear
Well,
his
they
name had
always
an
are
E in
fighting
it
on the
last
same
time.
card.
They always covered though.
Yeah, it's like when the
I-
LA Times accidentally printed Bradley as a picture of Mayweather.
yeah. So in terms of
I mean,
their career highlights, what's his I don't know, what's his signature?
Jermel's over his signature win would be Gabe Rosado.
yeah, just a complete whitewash of Gabe Rosado.
He
Mm.
beat Demetrius Hopkins too, which is who's that? Like Hopkins' nephew or
Which was
something?
really,
That was
yes,
yeah.
was a really entertaining fight.
But yeah,
Actually, you know what? That silence was actually more entertaining than that fight.
yeah, okay. I was like, dude, I'm not ready to go back and break down that fight right now with you.
No, but
uh, uh, but
Charlo has looked vulnerable at times. He was dropped against Charlie Oda just a little less than a year ago, and we haven't seen him score a knockout since October of 2013. And Charlo's a big super welterweight, so I'm not too sure what's going on with that.
Super
He's a good
welter can
boxer.
be a bit empty because of the incentive to go down to welter. I don't know what's out there at super welter that's super
Canelo.
exciting. Yeah, I think is Canelo the only thing though at super welter?
Cotto.
Yeah, that's true.
uh,
Yeah, there's some bits and pieces you can put on, but it's not a stellar division. I think that's a fair comment.
Yeah. Martirosyan, he is coming off of his first loss of his career. Not coming off of, it was actually late 2013 when he lost a split decision to Demetrius Andrade, who somehow disappeared after looking spectacular against Brian Rose. But we'll talk
Mm.
about Andrade's disappearing act later. For me, Martirosyan he's a really, really good fighter who comes up short against particular styles, and what those styles are defensive fighters with length, and I just described perfectly Demetrius Andrade and Erislandy Lara. I thought Lara was clearly beating Martirosyan when they fought too. That ended up being a draw. I think Charlo is he's been matched perfectly here with Martirosyan, and I think this could be his big calling card, or is that what we call it? Like his big come out party.
yeah.
He's a good jabber. He's a good boxer. This guy can move, and if he can find his power, he could insert himself at the top as super welterweight pretty quickly.
But Martirosyan's got spoiler written all over him too. He's a tough outing. If I'm gonna predict, I definitely say Charlo could win this. I just don't know that it's gonna be as stylistically perfect of a matchup, but it might end up being. Actually, Martirosyan does get disrupted by jabs and some movement, so it really who knows? It could end up being a whitewash, I suppose.
For me, Martirosyan's just a little. It's a little basic. I think he tends to fall into patterns a lot in his fights where he becomes predictable and he keeps going for the same thing over and over again. But that's enough about that
Who's
because
his trainer?
it was Freddie Roach for a while, but I don't know who's training him right now. I see where you're getting with this. If you're listening for the first time and don't know, you should go back to the episode where we talk about Zhu Shiming because Simon he goes on a little rant about Freddie Roach and his fighters, and it's a really interesting rant if you haven't heard it yet. Let's talk about Jhonny Gonzalez and Gary Russell Jr. And what we got here is experience versus youth, tradition versus speed and flashy offense, and both are kind of like at a point where they're trying to solidify what it is that they are. So is Jhonny Gonzalez this one punch knockout artist that we've seen? And is Gary Russell Jr. this flawed guy who can't box unless the opponent is way lower than him in skill? We're about to find that out this coming Saturday. Which way are you leaning, Jason?
Oh man, why'd you have to come to me first on this one? This is
Because I knew you were unprepared.
Yeah, it's a tricky. It's not that I'm unprepared. It's a tough fight, man. This is the fight that I'm looking forward to most this weekend. Um, I don't know. I could really see it going, a couple ways. I think has Gary Russell. Have we seen Gary Russell after Lomachenko?
We have
Who was he in against? I'm trying to
TBA.
recall. So was it? So his
It was Chris Martin.
that was his rematch with TBA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he stopped him, and then he fought Chris Martin, and it was a 10-round decision shutout. Martin was 28-4 with a few draws on his record. Nothing too impressive. Martin had lost 2 of his last 3 fights, so
I'm thinking if we get the Gary Russell that showed up in the Lomachenko fight, that I think he did a good job. He did his best to hold his own in that fight. He did better than most people expected. I think he might be able to outpoint Jhonny Gonzalez.
hold on. Who are these most people? I don't remember anybody thinking that this fight that Gary Russell was going to completely get outclassed. Most people, and I should pull this up and we can look at this later. I thought most people thought Russell was going to at least be even at, if not,
no way!
beat
Lomachenko was going to
Lomachenko.
steamroll him. No.
That's not what the public. That's not what public opinion thought.
That fight was that Lomachenko was going to knock Russell out.
I got to side with Jason here. There was
Yeah,
an
man,
overwhelming thought that he was going to be absolutely steamrolled by someone who was, the hype for Lomachenko was enormous.
The Seth Mitchell of featherweight. Okay, like nobody believed in him. At least that's how I remember.
Because I remember making the argument to a bunch of people that when you have a fighter like Lomachenko with a long jab that knows how to use it versus a short guy with very little arms, you cannot pick the short guy with the little arms when he's going to be eating jabs all night. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think that's why you've got that perception, because you personally got involved in a debate with someone over it. But
okay, well, let's just I've totally hijacked and probably not even going to talk about this fight, but Gary Russell Jr. versus Vasily Lomachenko, who are you picking? The number one best, I'm sorting by best, the number one comment on Reddit Boxing,
I don't want
Gary Russell Jr. for the UD. Sorry, Loma Faithful. I'm not going to say the username because I don't want to out him right now. Now, there are a lot of people picking Lomachenko.
Yes,
I think it'll be Russell's coming out party. Dude is crazy skilled and has been silent for all of his career.
Go back. Why don't you go back and read all the favorable Lomachenko ones too while you're there? Not just
they're
the
not as
Russell
upvoted.
Who?
The best one was for Gary Russell Jr. Now, Lomachenko had a lot of people saying him, and they were agreeing, but it's not like a massive landslide here.
We'll agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Even Coke thought Lomachenko was going to win. Clearly, Russell Jr. was the prevailing opinion.
It's sound logic. I just don't agree. But I do love this matchup. This is going to be a good one. It's probably my favourite for this Saturday.
Likewise, this is definitely the fight I'm most looking forward to. So
the one guy who got downvoted picked Lomachenko.
Okay, stop. You lost.
How did I lose?
2v1, mate. It's a democracy.
Yes, man. Who cares?
The only thing I'm arguing for is that it wasn't Lomachenko wasn't. It wasn't like Kovalev versus Pascal, where it was like, yeah, Pascal's getting murdered. It's only a matter of time. This was a really close fight, and Russell had way more supporters than we give him credit for. I picked Lomachenko too, and I thought anybody who picked Russell was an idiot.
Here's the thing. So in that thread, the Russell top vote has 8. Lomachenko has 7. Here, I'll adjust it. Lomachenko
Frank
up,
picked
Russell down. Now we're even. All right.
Look, here's another thread.
You see
okay,
what I'm trying to say?
Here's another thread. Top vote Frank. We know who Frank
yeah,
is.
It's Frank. Yeah, no,
I'd
that's
have
the
to
one
go
I
with
was
Russell.
just looking at.
I wish Top Rank would take their time with Lomachenko.
Okay, this is all getting edited out.
Oh, my joke in there wasn't upvoted very much. I
No,
said
it
the
wasn't.
WBO.
You didn't get a lot. Yeah, you didn't get a lot of traction on that.
Whatever. So where are we at with this fight?
No,
I
I
don't
know.
remember what we were talking about.
I had
Where are
Gary
you?
Russell back in that matchup. I was backing them at
Were
the
you?
time. Yeah, no, well, not with any degree of confidence. Just my thoughts
right.
then and my thoughts now were that Loma has been rushed into the pro scene, hasn't
Right.
learnt his tricks, hasn't adjusted to how things are done, and a fighter who's aware of that and can, anyone who's studied in the school of Hopkins would be trouble for Lomachenko right now because he's too wet behind the ears and he's getting thrown in with like seasoned vets who know every trick in the book and they can pull his pants down when he's not looking and he clearly comes out of his comfort zone. So when there's like, a headbutt thrown or a low blow and things like that, it really throws him off his game. I think he hasn't had enough time and whereas Russell Jr. I thought could be that person who was able to wobble him by being a bit devious here and there. So I wasn't a strong supporter for Gary Russell in that matchup, but I thought he had a very good look in.
All right, so what do we think about Russell now? We've seen what Lomachenko did to him. I think that what the Lomachenko fight tells me more than anything, and Russell was surprisingly competitive in that fight.
Absolutely.
What I think is the world level pace, he can't hang. He needs more reps at a world level pace, and what that means is he's got to fight guys who have more experience at fighting, maybe former world champions or guys that have at least lost a couple of world championship fights. This is why Rios and Algieri were just blitzed by Pacquiao because they couldn't deal with the pace of a world champion level fighter. And if there's a fighter out there who is comfortable fighting at that pace, it's Jhonny Gonzalez. And this is a bad matchup for Gary Russell Jr.
Well, I agree with that. I think that they're solid points, but part of me thinks that Gonzalez rushes sometimes, and I don't know. I think that if he's careless, he could throw this fight away.
What if he decides to carry Russell for 11 rounds like he did Arce?
Yeah, I think that would be smart at that point. But I don't know. I think that there is a danger of him, I don't know, going off script and putting himself in needless risk.
I don't think there's a risk for, Gonzalez getting stopped, but I think there's a risk for maybe Russell picking up too many of the early rounds or something, where Russell could maybe just get out ahead on points and, Gonzalez would have a mountain to climb from a points decision wise.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'd definitely be picking Gonzalez from a betting perspective, but I fear there's some danger with Gary Russell Jr., so it's not a confident one. I think that he has the potential to upset the script.
It would make for a really fascinating narrative in his career to have gone from, pretty much a laughing stock of somebody who's being babied along every step of the way. Then he shows up to fight this guy with, 5 minutes of professional experience. He gets thoroughly beat up and then comes and upsets pretty much the old king of the featherweight division.
What are the odds on this fight? Do we have the betting odds? Because I think that would be kind of interesting
Gonzalez
to take a look at.
Plus 10,000 favorite. No, I'm kidding. It's actually really narrow.
It's got to be narrow. Yeah.
Yeah,
it does. It's almost even. It's 150 plus 150 for Gonzalez.
Yeah, that makes sense too. That's kind of where I would be at with it, honestly. I just
really.
Because Gary Russell really showed a lot in that Lomachenko fight. He really did for me. And I think what it showed is, you said that he can't hang at the world level. It showed me that he could hang a lot higher than I thought he could. I think
if Gary Russell had more knockout ratio, I might even favour him. I think that Jhonny's going to walk into some shots, but they're not going to carry enough to stop him, and they might throw his rhythm off, but he'll ultimately squeak out the victory, but he might look troubled doing so. So that's my worst case scenario prediction for if it goes badly for Jhonny. He's going to step onto some big shots that wobble him, but aren't enough to actually end him.
These odds are pretty much the same odds that we would get for Froch and DeGale. They have, projective sort of odds if certain fights got made.
Mm.
And Carl Froch is a minus 175 favorite over James DeGale.
Yeah.
Interesting. I disagree with you guys. I don't see this fight as even being close. And I think there's a chance that Russell wins on points, but I don't really see him going 12 rounds.
Really? You think he's
Yeah.
going to get stopped? Well, that would be, in my opinion, that would be how Gonzalez wins, would be a stoppage. I think if it goes to the cards, I think Russell's going to be the favorite.
Yeah, I know what you're getting at, and I don't like that, though. Because that's sort of like, there's no way that Gonzalez wins a scorecard fight against Russell Jr. I don't
But I'm
think
not
Russell's
even
going to
talking
land
about.
enough.
I'm not talking about from a corruption standpoint. I'm just talking about from I think that Russell may be able to legitimately squeak out a very tight 1 round victory.
Yeah, I can see that. I see where you guys are coming from. I think Gonzalez is winning either way, though. Now, it's time to wrap this up, guys, and I want to ask you guys some questions, and I want to get just a quick response from you guys. And the first thing I wanted to ask you guys is May 30th, Eddie Hearn announced his next supercard, which features the return of our boy Anthony Joshua. But on that card, we have a world title fight, Lee Selby versus Evgeny Gradovich. I'm curious to get Simon's take on this.
Why me?
It's because
you're a
I'm the one
big
who
fan of
can't
Selby, aren't you?
Selby.
It's a really disappointing one for me because you got to credit the matchmaking there. I don't like it, but I think he is going to do it, isn't he?
So we're talking about odds, right? Selby
he's-
is a minus 250 favorite over Gradovich.
Yeah, I think that's fair as well. Probably that's a bit narrow, if anything. I think he's a longer favourite than that.
Manny Pacquiao has a better shot at beating Mayweather than Gradovich of Selby, according to the odds.
I think that's about right too.
You don't think that there's any threat that Gradovich can overwhelm Selby with his activity and stop him, hopefully?
No, I don't. I think Selby's far too crafty for that, and he's gonna get this one.
Does it kill you to say this?
It does. You know it does. you know I want him in there with a tough opposition and who can pick him apart. But he is going to do this. Let's be real about it. And it is fantastic matchmaking. It breaks my heart, but that's the reality of it.
Jason, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I haven't.
fight?
I don't know enough about Selby. All I know is what Simon tells me. So I have a very skewed perception of who he is. But no, Gradovich, high activity, mauling style. Maybe doesn't have a ton of power behind his punches, but he's got a lot of volume. Selby's just got to be ready for it. I'm sure he knows what he's getting into. I think Gradovich is a guy that could get outboxed if you're a boxer. So
and that's what Selby does well, is he boxes from the outside.
So there you go. I don't know much about him, but I'll tell you, a boxer could beat him.
Yeah, it's not even so much outside boxing as like
you don't have to be Pernell
cheating.
Whitaker to beat Gradovich.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
no, you certainly don't. But you want to keep him on the outside a little bit.
We'll see him do what he always does, where he'll throw a jab out, let it linger, push it in between the other person's guard, and then swap it for a power shot.
Would you be happy if Gradovich scored the upset?
Oh yeah, that'd be Christmas, but it's not going to happen, is it?
It's unlikely according to the odds. So Jason, I wanted to get your opinion on the fight game, and specifically you, because Simon doesn't have HBO. I think there are a lot of things that the fight game could be doing, but they aren't, because they're choosing to do a lot of things, and at the same time, they're not really accomplishing too much.
I think
What
they
do
missed
you want to see in the fight game? Like, what would the ideal show, given HBO's resources and their terrific, personalities and stuff that they have on the show? What do you want to see that makes that a can't miss show?
Honestly, for me, I think maybe I'd want to see more fighters in studio. I know we got to have a nice, long form interview, quote unquote long form interview with Manny Pacquiao, where I don't feel like I walked away learning very much. I'd like to see maybe, not harder hitting questions, but just maybe trying to pull more out of fighters. I liked they brought on the lady from VADA once. That I thought that was really entertaining. So I think they have done some good things in the past. They've made the fight game a platform for fighters, so to speak, sometimes, which is nice. But what I got really disappointed with this week was the Manny Pacquiao interview where they were, she had Michelle Beadle had asked him, like, what happened in that hotel room? What did you guys talk about? And like it was basically a non-answer, and that's really like one of the only things I'm interested about this fight and leading up to it. Like, what actually was said during that? Is that something that seriously changed the course of the narrative of that fight and really made it happen? And I just felt really unfulfilled by that specifically.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there was a lot of the whole show occurs for at least us type of fans who, check boxing websites like 100 times an hour. We didn't learn anything new. And what I want to see is, I want to see a show that appeals to the casual fan, but I'd also like to feel educated on certain aspects. Like when she brought in, like, as you perfectly pointed out, when they brought in the woman from VADA, I think her name is Margaret Goodman.
Yeah,
we learned something about the VADA procedure and all that stuff.
I really
I'd like to
enjoyed
see
that.
things like that. I'd like to see promoters get interviewed and just like go over the things like, Aram, what was your role in this negotiation? And kind of like it comes off very official sounding. Like the interview with Michelle Beadle, it didn't feel like she made Manny feel comfortable, or at least that's what was kind of communicated to me. When you watch, really good interviewers, it seems like they loosen the subject, or not the subject, but the person who they're interviewing up, and then everything just kind of flows, and you kind of get the sense that you're listening in on a conversation versus this stiff Q&A. I'd also like to see some investigative stuff and like just going over, like drug testing procedures. Like, what is the difference between VADA, USADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency? What is the Nevada State Athletic Commission doing or not doing? Why did Brandon Rios pee in a styrofoam cup or whatever it was? Things like that.
Yeah, I think the show definitely has the platform to do those kind of things too. And who knows? I actually, the thing that it misses the boat on too is frequency. I think it's almost like a quarterly show at this point. Maybe they put out about 4 a year. And I think if we get that with a little more regularity, they'd be able to do more and just it'd be better.
So, Amir Khan, what is next for this guy? We know he's training. We saw him fighting. Not fighting, but we saw him take a picture with Ajay Ward. I think it was after he had just knocked him out. Apparently,
yeah, he had just knocked him down in sparring.
Yeah. So what is there that he can actually do? Simon, you should answer since you haven't spoken in like 10 minutes.
I don't know. It's a difficult one. What do you do as Amir Khan? I think we've covered him before, and I've pointed towards Cotto, and I'd do that again, definitely. I think, I'd be checking his passport. Did he ever go to one of the Spanish islands? Was he around when Kell got his injury? Because he needs Kell to not distract any of the top paydays in the division. But so he can either take a touch-up fight, just a stay busy fight, take Cotto, or wait and try and take Mayweather or Pacquiao, depending on how it goes in May.
No, Khan cannot sit.
No, he can't risk a touch-up. No, nor could he risk a touch-up fight.
He finally has to gain some momentum.
Yeah, he's liable to get really derailed and sidetracked again with taking a touch-up. I could see it going very poorly if he doesn't train properly or takes the wrong person a little too lightly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what we might see ultimately. But, that he's not going to be fighting Mayweather or Pacquiao anytime soon. Where's his big payday? Who is the big payday?
Why
I don't
isn't
think they're out
Bradley a
there.
payday for him?
Because Bradley's not
Why
a
is-
payday for himself even. Bradley's not a big
No
draw.
way. Bradley gets paid a ton of money. He has very high mandatory purses with Top Rank, upwards of $2 million. He's a very well paid fighter given his popularity. He's
Is
extremely
Outfield
overpaid.
representing him?
What's that?
Given his popularity, yeah, absolutely.
Giving his popularity, he's way overpaid.
If you fight Bradley, what sort of purse are you going to be taking away? It's not going to be.
Can you put that on
dazzling.
pay-per-view?
That's what I'm. Con Bradley. It may not be.
That
I don't know.
might be pay-per-view. It might sniff pay-per-view.
It might sniff it. Was Bradley Marquez pay per view?
It was.
See, that's right. Bradley Marquez level pay per view, but
Yeah.
it really is.
You're going to flop on numbers though and look like a joke, aren't you?
It can't
Well,
do any
no.
worse than Hopkins Dawson.
But those pay per views, they set an expectation of 250 to 300,000 buys. You know what I mean? They're not looking to push 1 million buys. And I think a Con Bradley fight could do maybe 200, 250,000 buys.
Yeah, I'd eagerly watch it, definitely.
You know?
Do you guys think that Khan is live against Cotto and could score a win? Yes or no?
No.
Yes.
Jason? Yeah.
Wow.
I agree. I think Khan
Cotto's
fighting
an
expertly
illusion.
could win a decision.
Yeah. So do
It's
I.
not likely, but he could.
He definitely could. Cotto, I don't know. I haven't seen anything out of Cotto that's impressed me in a long time.
Well, I suppose as long as they both listen to their trainers, that could be on the cards. But I have a feeling one of them wouldn't.
Aren't they both trained by Roach at this point? Why are we talking about this?
No, because
They're not?
Khan's not under Roach now, is he? He's with
He's not? Oh, he's
Virgil
with
Hunter.
Hunter. What am I thinking?
yeah, he's with Virgil Hunter. Yeah, if,
2011? Yeah.
yeah. So as long as Khan listens to Hunter, and as long as Cotto listens to Roach, then yeah, maybe it does go the distance and he wins on points.
What do you think? You think Cotto would stop him just off of like a size alone kind of thing?
Well, that's my general take, especially if Khan moves
Khan is
up.
bigger.
Sorry?
Khan is bigger than Cotto.
I don't know if it's so much size as what weight. If you have to go
Right.
up to, would this be at middle? Like how does this get done?
Has
Well,
Cotto ever fought at middle though? So
Yeah, Cotto's done with middleweight. That's a lost cause for him.
so I'm gonna tie this into the last question. So Khan Cotto actually makes a lot of sense now, and I didn't think so until I saw the news that Bradley is now looking to be fighting, or is rumored to be fighting Bundridge, who has been Cotto's rumored opponent for like 8 months.
Bradley's
now-
rumored to fight Bundridge?
He is
Since when?
since today.
Wow.
Sunday. So now, putting that all that conversation aside, Bradley Bundridge stands to be probably one of the ugliest fights that you can make in boxing.
Oh my
So my
gosh.
question to you guys is, can you make an uglier fight?
Bundridge already has, and it was against Ishe Smith.
No, it was Carlos Molina. His first fight
Oh yeah,
was pretty dreadful.
that was dreadful too.
And Ishe Smith had a dreadful one with Carlos Molina
Yeah.
as well. I mean, who
Who's
hasn't?
maybe, yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe Molina's the common denominator here.
Although the last fight, Bundridge's last fight with Molina was actually pretty entertaining. Do you guys remember it?
I can't recall it right now.
Bundridge shot Molina a bunch of times.
This is the sex offender Molina.
Correct. That's the one.
Alleged. I don't know. Whatever happened with that.
Yeah, you always got to put the alleged.
Alleged. I probably should have led with alleged, but it's too late now.
It's like,
right. Exactly.
like Jeffrey Dahmer allegedly killed 66 men that he confessed to. It's like, well, it wasn't allegedly.
For him, it's only alleged because it's probably 7,500. Yeah. It's alleged. It's like we're alleging that it's a low number.
This is a dark turn. I don't know how we've ended up here.
This got really ugly.
Well, we were talking about ugly fights, and
Well, there you go. This is what
that's
Yeah, and
what
the
Carlos
natural-
Molina and
when I think
Bundridge and
Bundridge-
The
Bradley
natural next
got.
step is serial killers. Yeah,
Yep,
absolutely.
Bundridge, Bradley to serial killers.
When we say
Which is
ugly,
a-
what are we talking about? Ugly, boring, ugly, messy.
Both.
Like a ton of headbutts.
headbutts, a lot of holding, a lot of punches that you're just not sure where they're landing, a lot of referee intervening, and not like the Jack Reese style of intervening, but like you literally got to part them.
Skeet Gavin.
No, Skeet Gavin was ugly because it was boring. I mean, like, like both guys lead with their head. They both come together. Punches
So what's your
don't land.
example?
Molina Smith, Ishe Smith, and Carlos Molina
Smith.
on the
Yeah.
Mayweather Canelo undercard, I believe it was. Real barn burner.
Oof.
Cornelius Bundridge has been. Who was he fighting? He fought on HBO a while ago. I remember watching it with my dad, and he was not a boxing fan, and he was just like asleep within minutes.
Yeah, I don't think Delvin Rodriguez, Austin Trout comes to mind. That was kind of a slowy. That was more just slow pace, I think, than anything.
Leopai Klitschko, maybe?
Well, we got some excitement in that fight.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just, from a technical point of view, it was just repetitive and a bit ugly.
The Demetrius Hopkins Jermell Charlo fight definitely qualifies in this category. And Lara Martirosyan also good nomination here.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for this edition of the Sunday Puncher podcast. We'll be back next week. We hope you enjoyed this one. We have a lot to talk about next week.